Chapter 4: The Hunt Becomes Madness. South Salem, back streets and alleyways. Wednesday, 12:27 a.m. Saul hadn't truly slept in nearly 5 days. Sleep tried to come, once or twice, but it never got past the doorway of his mind. The moment his body relaxed, the images returned, doves falling, blood misting the air, van doors sliding into his bullet's path like clockwork. Stephen's face remained constant through it all. That maddening, unbreakable calm. It was no longer about missing. It was about something else pulling the strings. The city had turned smaller, colder. Saul now stalked the spaces most people ignored. Service alleys behind the state capitol, forgotten walkways behind shuttered diners, hollow streets where the rain carried the stink of rot and old gasoline. And Stephen moved through them all like a phantom. Not hiding, not afraid, but always ahead. "I see you," Saul whispered, sighting through the scope. He was tucked behind a broken HVAC unit 3 rooftops above the 34th Street Mission, another one of Stephen's habitual haunts. The building groaned under its own weight, windows fogged with the breath of a dozen addicts huddled inside for warmth. Through his scope, Saul watched Stephen kneel beside a man convulsing from withdrawal. Stephen's hand rested gently on the man's shoulder, whispering something Saul couldn't hear. The addict wept openly, collapsing into him like a child. Saul's breath froze in his lungs. His finger crept along the trigger. Clean shot. No birds. No vans. No bottle. This time, movement. The universe bled chaos again. An old woman, hunched over her cart of trash bags and broken umbrellas, staggered into frame. The squeaky wheel of her cart shrieked like a dying animal. Her head bobbed directly into his line of fire. Timing. Always timing. Saul pulled his finger away from the trigger so hard it cramped. The moment evaporated. He slammed the rifle down beside him and pressed his fists into his eyes until they burned white behind the lids. He could feel his pulse in his gums. The skin along his jawline twitched involuntarily. "You're toying with me." The whisper inside him said nothing this time. Only the silence pressed in. Hours blurred. Saul followed Stephen deeper into Salem's underbelly. From the shelters to the docks, from the old industrial parks to the skeletal frames of buildings being swallowed by moss and decay. Rain slicked every surface like oil. By dawn, his clothes stuck to him like wet paper. His breath came in hitches, and then came the ambush. Under the Union Pacific Bridge, 3 a.m. The first blade flashed out of the shadows fast. Reflex took over. Saul's arm shot out, twisting the kid's wrist mid-swing. The wrist snapped like a dry branch. The kid screamed, dropping the knife. Another man lunged from behind with a pipe, clumsy, drunk on adrenaline. Saul spun, ducked low, and drove his shoulder into the man's gut, lifting him just enough to flip him backwards into the steel dumpster behind them with a hollow metallic clang. There were more, too many. 4 ahead, 3 behind, 7 in total. The alley flooded with desperate energy. Young men, eyes glassy, lips curled in wide grins, boys pretending at murder. They thought he was prey. They had no idea who they were circling. One of them leveled a handgun too close. Saul bared his teeth and bit. His jaw clamped down on the man's cheek, teeth sinking into flesh like raw fruit. The man screamed as Saul tore free, spitting the bloody pulp into the mud. Before the screams finished, Saul drove his elbow into the man's throat, crushed his windpipe, and kicked him sideways as his sidearm cleared leather. Pop, pop. 2 shots into the next closest chest. The wet slap of meat hitting steel. The narrow alley roared with the sounds of chaos. Steel scraping, boots splashing through puddles, frantic screaming as more blades swung wild. One knife grazed Saul's ribs. Another slashed across his forearm. He barely registered the pain. He moved on instinct now, a beast cornered. Another man came in too fast. Saul caught him under the chin with the muzzle, tilted his head back, and pulled the trigger. The back of the man's skull exploded like a pumpkin dropped from a rooftop. The last 2 tried to run. The first made it 5 steps. Pop! His spine folded mid-stride. The second one turned the corner, almost free, when Saul's final shot caught him square in the back, the round punching out through his chest in a small fountain. Then it was over. The alley fell silent but for the rain. 7 bodies. Blood pooling in the gutters, running like dark ink into the storm drains. Steam rose from Saul's breath. His shirt clung to him, shredded, at the warmth of his own leaking blood mixing with the rain. He stood in the middle of the carnage, panting, revolver smoking in his grip. The smell was metallic, iron, copper, mud, and through it all that faint whisper again. Not from his head, but from everywhere. Not yet. Across the street, illuminated by the distant halogen glow of a street lamp, stood Stephen. Hood drawn, paper grocery bag in hand, just watching. He didn't run. He didn't flinch. He simply turned and walked away. Saul stood frozen, hand trembling around the pistol. For the first time since this job began, he felt it. Not anger. Not frustration. Later, Carlos's garage, North Salem. Carlos sewed the gash in Saul's arm with quick, practiced stitches. His one good eye barely blinked as the curved needle dug through flesh. The smell of isopropyl and old motor oil mixed in the air. "You're not hunting a man anymore," Carlos muttered. "You're testing heaven's patience." Saul didn't answer. He stared at the blood running down his side, his chest tight with something worse than pain. He wasn't sure who he feared more now, Stephen or whoever was protecting him.